Morning, conference.
Morning.
Morning. Morning. Oh, it's so good to be here. It really, really is. So I'm just going to get started. My presentation is improving global majority attainment within our sign language interpreting translation profession. Before I start, I just want to clarify the term global majority. It's a collective term, and it's there to describe people who are black, brown, the indigenous global south, Asian, South Asian people, and it's a redress of the racialized term of ethnic minorities. So if you don't navigate those sort of political race spaces, it's more positive than saying ethnic minorities, and it's one that I favour to use. So that's the first thing. I will come back to that point later on when we talk about voiceovers. Right, let me just, I've got a lot of things going on here. Okay. So a little bit about me. I've been interpreting for a long time. I will hold that to the end because that's also another little secret. And been in the interpreting profession for a long time, and I'm a member of EFSLI, WASLI, all of them particularly, and I'm also a founding member of IOCN, which is the Interpreters of Colour network that was set up. And I'm going to speed through this really quickly because we have some of the slides that are really important to talk about. We have 180 members roughly, and we exist to address representation for people of colour in the sign language interpreting and translation profession. I too, like Selena, do not like saying translators, interpreters. I like to think that deaf and hearing, we are all interpreters, we're all doing the same job. I struggle with that distinction, but maybe I could be corrected by deaf translators and say actually we like the different label, but that's another workshop. Okay, we offer a safe, nurturing space, and the fact that there are so many interpreters of colour here, I think, is testament that IOCN is needed. Lots have come to EFSLI that have never come before. I think it's been really good adding to a lot wider, diverse conversation that we're all having today. Awkward conversations, but we're having them. We're a central hub, we have a website, we have a booking system, we're training, we are a space where you can reach out to us and invite us to come along and be panel speakers like we're doing today. We are a membership that is not, we didn't anticipate this, but we set up for the UK, and then we had members all over Europe saying, please can I join, I've heard about you, I'm the only Italian black interpreter, I need someone else to talk to. So we didn't anticipate that happening, but it's been really fantastic. So I think there's a need out there in Europe too. And as I said yesterday, we are not a homogenous group, we represent many different backgrounds, ethnicities, and it's about all of us coming together because we feel othered. We also have deaf translators that we're really proud of, that we really, really support. And it's been really interesting their point of view about always just looking at their deafness, but then starting to unpack their own intersectionalities and going, oh yeah, I am Asian, and oh, I'm this or I'm that, plus I'm deaf. So that's been really exciting having those discussions too. And we're a real mix, so we've got deaf translators, as I said, we've got students, qualified, and we want to support everyone all the way through, because attainment is really important. And just before we set up, we had our first inaugural meeting, people came to that meeting and said, I was just about to leave the profession. We had about 5 people saying I was going to leave. I just felt like I wasn't valued here. So, it's important. So I called it the current diversity conundrum, but it's kind of removing. I've got to do the clicker. There we are. So I'm just going to talk about kind of macro, what's out there in our landscape, and then we're going to kind of get from further in and think about us as individuals, practitioners. So there was a powered down research done by Atka Sidka, who's not here today unfortunately, but he started playing around with these concepts of how many people of colour worked in our profession. And then last year there was a census done for sign language interpreters. Most of you know is funded by EFSLI, Harriet Watt did the research and identified that non-white sign language interpreters stand at 9%. We think the fraction is perhaps a little bit lower. So estimates are between 6 and 9%. And in real terms, what that equates to is about 1,400 interpreters, is about 112 interpreters only, of interpreters of colour, which is very awkward, I think. You know, we've been around, established in the UK for 35, 40 years. Is that it? It's mad. And out of those 20 recommendations, IOCN was featured in every one of them. But what was fascinating about the recommendations is that we were never ever consulted on. The recommendations went out, there was no consultation with us. So IOCN sits in all of them. And I just think that's really interesting. We all know the expression as interpreters, nothing about us without us. And that's a great example of, you know, where people are having discussions around IOCN interpreters and when we're not involved in those discussions, we're not at the table. Again, that's like marginalising, and I just think that's worth just putting that out there. Moving on. Is that right? Okay. So, we know there aren't enough interpreters of colour out there. What do we do about it? We know that we have the university route to becoming a sign language interpreter, so hold that thought, we know that's there. But many of us come into interpreting later. It's incidental. You were a support worker first, you worked at a hospital, you were a teacher, and then you discovered sign language and you thought it was great, and then slowly you navigated through into becoming a sign language interpreter. But the problem in the UK, and I'm aware my lens is very UK focused, is that if you train as an interpreter outside of the university route, it's very clunky, and it's bitty, and it's very expensive, and it takes years and years and years and years. So if IOCN have had these fantastic discussions about, you know, doing a recruitment strategy completely focused around EDI, you know, let's get all those colourful people into our profession. But, you know, we could go to careers fairs, we could spot certain places where we know there's lots of diversity at particular events, but then lots of people as mature students can't go to university, it's expensive, lots of Black and Asian people or from a lower socio-economic background, plus have caring responsibilities, plus have larger family dynamics as well. And the goalpost of acquiring those people into our profession just goes off into the horizon. So we need to think about that and our privileges and think about our structure and how we can change that, because we can do all the campaigning and running around with banners as we want, but we're stuck with that barrier of how do you get people in. Not everybody can go to university. In fact, going to university is a very privileged space to be in.
Yes, it is.
Visibility, another conundrum. There is a lack of visibility. Well, there we are. For high-profile assignments, theatres, public spaces, all those kinds of events, there's not enough, what I would say, intersectional teams being considered. You know, why wouldn't you have a deaf translator in your team at a public event, a few people from different backgrounds, and you know, you might have some really skilled people who are maybe white, but you work within a team, you share your wealth of knowledge, and then you pick up on people, go, I don't know that, but you do, and you work together. You provide an excellent service. You know, we are public servants at the end of the day, aren't we? So you work together, those intersectional teams are really critical. And there just aren't enough of us out there in those visible places. And you know the expression, you can't be what you can't see. Mm-hmm. And also there's a lack of materials. I was on Instagram the other day, I'm an avid Instagrammer, I'm on Instagram all the time, and I was looking at a really well-known charity, and they had become a CSW. And so for those of you who are not from the UK, that's a communication support worker. That is an obvious route that people train. They do their level 1, they do their level 2, 3, they work at college, and some of them go, actually I might become an interpreter, and they jump over into the interpreting profession. Now the marketing material are two like really shiny white people with blue eyes and crisp, perfectly ironed, like suity type things, and this poor black deaf person going, And I was just like, I'm sorry, I find that disgusting.
Yeah.
Like, it has to stop. You know, we need much more diverse materials. We need Asian people. We need women with veils that are, as the unprofessional. We don't have one Rasta, I think, in the whole of Europe. I find that interesting. You know, why is that? Because are they viewed as not professional because you have dreadlocks? You know, we need these people because they want to talk to their community. And so deaf people can't access areas of their own culture because there aren't any interpreters that really can represent them. So marketing materials, obvious, but it needs to change. And a side note is, going back to what you can't be, what you can't see, Jackie Beckford, who's one of the founders of IOCN, has always been a theatre interpreter. IOCN have about 20 interpreters there that said, I saw you on stage. And I thought, that's me. I can do that. So it does work.
Yeah.
It's powerful. We need more of that. You know, we need more deaf translators out there too. So other deaf people go, you can do, I thought it was just hearing interpreter. I'll do that too. We need much, much more of that. I'm going to do the clicker first this time. Getting the hang of this now. Another thing is systems. Really, really important. So we've got universities, we've got regulatory bodies, and we need to embed EDI more into their policies and practices and their staffing and recruitment. And I'm going to break this down a little bit as this is the examples I've given. And they are, I'm not saying we should do them, I'm saying let's just drop it here and have a think about it. What can we do to change the structures? Because we know with 112 IOCs in the UK, it's not working. So I really do think that everyone has to do CPD in the UK, and we potentially could have EDI, equality, diversity, inclusion, becoming mandatory, a few hours. And I kind of look at mandatory hours could be, some of the training could be around how do you work with a deaf translator. Loads of interpreters are too scared to book a deaf translator. The bad thing is, if you're doing Zoom and you're doing your Teams, sometimes it's all one way. You know, you get on the phone to your friend and go, one way, easy, comfortable, no voiceover. Why don't you call your deaf translator friend and say, do you think you can book a panel typist? We could do this job together. People just don't think that way.
Yeah.
You need to reframe those attitudes. So there's that. And also, so just more thinking around casting interpreters. And I want to say about NRCPD, we could have just more mandatory, as I said, CPD put into place. I think NRCPD could change those structures to help us a little bit. And also, what I want to, NRCPD, for those of you who don't know, is like our sort of statutory body that we all have to register with, and they own our code of ethics and kind of keep us in check. But they don't really help us as a system. They don't do anything around EDI. They completely stay silent. And what I think they should do, I think it's line 3, and it says about taking on bookings where you have experience and knowledge. There isn't anything around culture at all. It's biased. There's nothing to help. So we have these weird scenarios where, you know that there's a Bengali poetry event online, and you're like, oh, Akbar, you could do this. This is so up your alley. You know, deaf people watching that will have access to so many nuances. And then you'll find out another interpreter was booked, and I have to say, sorry, white interpreter who knows nothing about Bengali or the culture, or not even married to anyone from that sort of dysphoria, that nothing at all, will go, well, I gave access. It wasn't my best work, but it's all right. Probably no one watching anyway. It's just not good enough. That's just not good enough. So it's very awkward, and there's no whipping stick there at the moment. You know, a lot of IOCs have quite a campaign in the background going, how can deaf, black, Asian, global majority deaf people access their culture if it's always going through a white filter? You know, like those foreign words, and you go, foreign. You know, might be someone there, a deaf person, that wants to know and have that information, have those nuances. They don't have access to that. It needs to change. It needs to shift. It needs thinking about. Even if you got the job, find another interpreter of colour, work together, share your knowledge. You know, maybe you know the booker really well, but you go to the booker, I need someone else here because this, that and the other. Work together, be allies. This is controversial, but I am a little bit controversial. And so FC's constitution is interesting. So we have 118 members. We've had lots of lovely conversations with EFSLI about a memorandum of understanding. So we're kind of there, but we're not, I don't think we'd have the power to vote. So I might be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. But at the moment we couldn't join because we're not a nation, we're not a country. We're just a collection of people. There's two of us in the UK, Italy, Holland. So we can't really get to the table. And so it's a system, it's a systematic thing. You know, we've had a discussion about this already, and FCU said, well, we'd have to go back to the members and they'd have to vote on it, and we'd have to change our constitution. That's a massive piece of work. Yeah, it is, or we stay here stuck, you know? So I'm not saying it should be, I'm not saying go and change your constitution, but think about systems, because there are loads of them in place that block and stop. So just keep that in mind. And I kind of touched on this in Selina's presentation. There really needs to be a serious piece of work around database or EDI signs. There isn't anything at all. There needs to be some juicy piece of work done with loads of funding, with funded roles so people can do the legwork. And again, that there isn't anything in place for that. You know, at the moment, it's everyone kind of texts someone and do you know the sign for quick? I'm just about to sign Eritrea. What is it? What is it? You know, oh, it's all right now, I have to finger spell it. We just, you know, we need something in place. What's the sign for Diwali? There's all these signs, beautiful signs up there, and people don't know them. And they should really be in the training from the beginning, but they're not. And that says quite a lot about, again, systems, bodies, and it's not important. It is important. It's really, really important. Okay. Right. Lastly, I want to talk about, sorry, I'm running over time, work colleagues, and that I just feel that there needs to be a bit of an attitude change. I've kind of alluded to it already, but I think these domains need to be seen as important, and it's not interpreters' fault. It is how we've been trained. Nobody was taught about that. There wasn't a module on EDI, so nobody ever started thinking about those kind of things. But there just needs to be, you know, you're working as a sign language interpreter with a different culture. Then you might be working in a diverse space. You're dealing with two cultures already. And people go, well, it's not specialist, I've got a bit of awareness, I know the country signs, and off they go. Oh, they're just going to go, oh, is Eritrea there, or is Ethiopia, is Djibouti there, or it doesn't matter. Can you imagine if I sign Scotland down there? It matters. It's insane. No one's really thinking about that. So I think there should be something about, you know, court work is specialist, media work is specialist, working in EDI spaces, LGBTQITA plus specialist. They are really, really specialist areas, and you're working with two cultures. You need to know your stuff, and you need to be culturally competent. You need to be competent as an interpreter, and you need to be culturally competent in those areas. You know, it's not good enough just a little bit of awareness. And lastly, because I'm running out of time, I just want to say something about voiceovers and relationship building and taking up space, which is really important. Black and brown people, there was something that was alluded to yesterday about making yourself small or making yourself big. And I'm here today, and people are like, oh, Nikki, you're fine, you're really, really confident. I've been interpreting for 25 years. I'm 50 next year. It's taken me a long time to take up space and be here. It's been a massive, massive journey for me. And so this is the same for deaf black people, all of us who are othered. We always present small. We don't want to take up space, but we kind of do, but we don't know how, because when you've been oppressed for a long time, it's a very sort of strange push me, pull you dynamic you're in. So, for instance, if you're voicing over, and I've had these debates before, if you're voicing over for a black man, and I'm going to take a really simple example of saying the cat sat on the mat. There are many with different ways, intonation, nuances of how that's said. And I might be really measured and careful because I might be voicing over for a black man, and he might be not wanting to take up space in a white space. And the white interpreter goes, I know what he said. He said the cat, and just voice over, loud. But actually the black man is being really considerate about how much space he's taking up. It's so subtle. He doesn't want to invade and take over. He's a big black man, a small black man. But there's something about how black people, brown people, Asian people, the majority, navigate spaces. And so the intention, you might understand what he's voicing, but do you understand how he wants to come over? People just need to park that and really think about it. It's so important. And I've had, with very close friends of mine, interpreters that I work with all the time, I'll go, I know he wouldn't be voiced like that. He's a black man, or she's a, and those stuff, because you're privileged, you're used to those white spaces, it's different for us. So just to be mindful of that. I think I've pretty much finished, but I just want to go back to my first point about the term ethnic minorities. And I think Octavia said something yesterday about relationship building, or it can go, if the voiceover isn't done a certain way, that it can have the opposite negative effect. If a deaf person says, and they are politically, racially, aware, and they think in that particular way, if they say black and brown people, the voiceover is black and brown people, you might want to catch up because your lag time is very far behind and say, oh, ethnic minorities. But actually, it's negative. If the deaf person said black and brown people, or even if the hearing person said that, you say that as well. Because it's those dynamics about if someone becomes connected to someone or not, or that was a bit clunky. So there are so many nuances and interplay between language that just need to be considered that I think people forget about. So I'm going to wrap up there. I have put a conclusion. I don't like the conclusion. We're not concluding anything. I think the jury is really very much out, and I think there's a lot of work to be done. So I just kind of, summarise. I just think as a whole, as a profession, we really need to look at our privilege, our structures, everything about the way we work, and we just need to, and our biases, and we need to modernise our practices. We need to change things, especially in education. University, yes, but especially when people come through other routes. It's very, very difficult. And the shift, hopefully, we get a greater attainment of people, global majority, deaf pop interpreters, so important. We need more of them, much, much more. LGBTQIA+. And we also need more Welsh Indigenous speakers, only because I live right next door to Wales, so it's in my lens as well. So, we need them to enter our profession. So that's it for me. Okay, thanks very much.